Yeah, Tesla it shouldn't be perceived as a vehicle manufacturing company. They're not. This is the tool they have to roll out their innovation. But the brain of the company is not in the wheel or the pedals or the screen. The power of the company is actually in their ability to collect tremendous amounts of data, analyze it, and allow you to have an experience such as Waymo, but with significantly less sensors and significantly more data. It's going to be a very interesting race to think about the production costs of a Waymo versus a Tesla. If Tesla can give you the same experience as Waymo, but with way less sensors, it's gonna be a different game.
And welcome to the Venture Victory podcast, where we look at the entrepreneurial journey from startup to exit. I'm totally pumped today. We've got Maxim Melamedov in the house, and he is the founder and CEO of Zesty, an AI-driven cloud optimization platform that's really helping redefine how companies manage their cloud infrastructure. And AI is having a big impact on that. What's also kind of cool about Maxim that I, I thought was really neat is maybe his own personal journey. He came from Russia, or from the Soviet Union, I should say, back in that era, and then he and his family migrated to Israel, where he grew up there and served, was a veteran in the Israeli Air Force. He then moved to Homeland Security, and then into technology as an entrepreneur. And apparently, from what I've heard about as well, that you have a family that's very entrepreneurial, guided and spirited as well. So we're really excited to have him. Now, Zesty has raised over $116 million from top tier investors like B Capital and Sapphire Ventures. So obviously, the timing seems to be very good, since all we hear about in the news is about the growth of AI and how that's going to drive data site usage, and there's going to be a consumption problem. And I know you're tackling, I've had a lot of podcast guests, what they're doing is they're tackling one little piece of the ecosystem in AI. And it's going to be cool to kind of talk about that a little bit. I got some great questions to ask for that. So I think also, your journey, which is kind of cool, coming from from security and the military, and then going into becoming a tech entrepreneur, and the background of other people that I've met who've been on the show, who are also came out of the Israeli Air Force and became entrepreneurs. There's definitely this focus on measurement and attacking real world problems and getting to the end of that. So looking forward to that. So how you doing today, Maxim?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
That's great. You got a lovely day going on. Obviously, I can see by the background. It's
Yes,
luscious. Is that San Mateo or
it's Palo Alto.
Palo Alto? What a great place. Gotta love Stanford. All right, so um, love to just kind of get a quick introduction, a little bit just kind of on you and your background. As we said, your journey started way back in the Soviet Union days. You made your way all the way to Israel, to the United States, and now you're a tech entrepreneur. Was this part of the master game plan? Was like, I'm going to do my time in the military. I'm going to come over here and do some government work, try to figure an angle, and then I'm going to become a tech entrepreneur. What inspired you to do this very difficult thing, which is become a startup guy?
So right after the army, uh, like hold on, I was always surrounded by entrepreneurs. Like growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur. My family, my uncle is an entrepreneur. My cousin is an entrepreneur. We own the family business, so I was always around the business side of the things, and I always knew that at some point I'm gonna start my own business. And I actually started my first company right after the army service. Um, I did it with my best friend. We ran for half a year. We closed the business. We're still best friends. And
That's
then I was like,
amazing.
yeah, and then I was like, okay, I really have to learn a lot, because there is a difference between owning a family business or making some operational elements to doing something that is bigger and more impactful. And I've spent a really interesting period of my life in a very unique project in the company called Logic. Um, did some really interesting, I would say, history defining things. Um, and then I decided that, like, hey, Israel is a startup nation. What startups are about? Like, I understand that you have to build something and you have to ship it. So that's the concept of every business. Either someone builds it and you ship it, or somebody, or you build it and someone else ships it. It's kind of like it's the same concept. So I decided to actually learn the startup world from the bottom up. I joined a company as a customer support manager to kind of understand how you interact with the customers and how it all goes back, like, so reverse engineering everything.
Hmm.
And I found, like, instead of building physical products, you can build software, and that software is not to be shipped, but it's can be consumed constantly and constantly evolve. So it's a different model than building something and selling it. It's a subscription, it's SaaS. Like, wow, that's a whole different business model. That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I decided that, hey, I want to learn more of how you run a company, how you make executive decisions, strategic decisions. So I've moved up to be a VP at a travel tech company, VP of customer success, kind of like one step further. And like, okay, I see the problem. I see what will happen in the market moving in a few years, because coming from a socialist country, when you have no unemployment and you have interest rates zero, it means that there is something wrong with the business.
Yeah.
So that was the trajectory I saw in the global economy. And I was like, well, if there will be time where this will break, this is not an efficient way to operate. And that when that will break, companies would start cutting, driving more efficiency. And the second or the third biggest spend on each of every technological company is actually infrastructure. And if we can build a product that automates cloud infrastructure and making it more efficient using machine learning, or using technology, we will be helping people to keep their jobs, driving more efficiency, driving better results, right? So that was kind of the idea.
What I first of all, I love this hilarious statement that you and your former business partner are still best friends. That is truly amazing. I think I think when people go into business together or they do startups, and a lot of people who do them that are young or have less experience, repetitively doing them, um, the team camaraderie and the emotions that can get involved with people and that can destroy relationships that were once good as friendships is a real common story I have. So it sounds like you guys manage that with care and with honesty, which is really great. I love that thought. I've never really, although I do understand the history of Israel reasonably well. Um, I've never really thought of them as in the terms startup nation, but they really are when you look at time and perspective, and where you have come in such a quick period of time, particularly on the tech end in the last 30 years. I don't think there's been anything like that in the world in such a concentrated area. It's also, a lot like in the United States, a lot of times we talk about it's very hard to make that transition from like the US military into the agility and nimbleness that's required to be a startup person. Like it's such a big command and control hierarchical structure. But it seems like so many Israelis um, don't have that problem. There's so many Israeli entrepreneurs here in the United States, and they all served in the military, and they bring a lot of those attributes. Um, have you observed something like that too, or why is it that so many Israelis who come out of the military? I know everybody has to serve mandatorily, but mandatorily, I should say, but so many of them have the entrepreneurial spirit coming from the military to want to do things new. Any idea what's driving that, or like what? Because I'm sure you have other friends that are entrepreneurs as well, as we talked about earlier.
So first of all, It's the level of responsibility you're getting at a very early stage, very young age. Like
Yeah.
you're being drafted at 18, and at the age of 19, you are starting to like lead people or take bigger assignments that you're starting to manage people.
Yeah.
And by the age of 20, most likely you would be responsible for more and more stuff. And by the age of 21, you're out, right?
Yeah.
Because you have
Wow.
3 years, unless you would extend your service. But you have 3 years to max everything because you're getting a plane, like a blank slate. Like, yeah, go figure it out, right? If you have an initiative, go. If you want to do this, go. Like, because the system is constantly in motion, constantly in rotation, if you can make a small impact early on, that would stick and that will grow, right?
Yeah.
So getting the ability to lead people, take more responsibility, and influence things, it's given to you by design, by the system, because in 3 years you'll be out,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah.
can take that 3 years and say, hey, I'm going to do the bare minimum, or I'm going to take this as an opportunity for me to make an impact. And once you see that you were able to make an impact, like, oh, okay, good. And you developed, some people develop leadership skills, some people develop technological skills, people develop a lot of skills because they had the option and they were facing a challenge that they had to solve. So a lot of people rise to the occasion, solve different challenges, either through leadership or through technological innovation or from an operational standpoint. And when they are released, like, okay, I have done that, I feel confident in my ability to execute, to drive, to lead, to guide, to innovate. How can I replicate my success? And because of the ecosystem is very connected, people will by design are trying to help each other, right? So if you have an idea, you can say, hey, can you chat with me? I think I can solve a problem. Okay. And well, you know what? That's not quite right. But if you can do this and this and that, that will be more interesting for me. Like, okay, and you start getting feedback, and this is how you start to reiterate and you build.
Yeah. Sounds like an amazing entrepreneurial training ground. And it seems to be a common thread that I see in so many Israeli entrepreneurs. So something's happening, both male and female, through that orientation over those 3 years. And maybe it is because it's a mandatory draft and people start so young and they're so, like you said, responsibility is thrown upon you at such a young age. I don't know if there's a difference between maybe when you get out, a lot of recruits are starting in the United States. I don't really know, but there is something very special about Israeli entrepreneurs. It's kind of neat. Well, let's talk for a minute about Zesty because AI is in the news every day. Everybody seems to have a huge interest in it because it's transforming our world at just a blistering speed. Let's talk a little bit about what Zesty actually does, the problem that you saw that you've been trying to solve, and obviously you've raised so much money in such a short period of time. The marketplace must see the potential, at least in somebody who can solve a fairly large problem.
Yeah. So thank you. So when we're saying when we're using AI, when you're using all this technology, it requires computers to run on, right? And you can look at this service, the podcast service that we're currently using.
Right.
Amazon.com, ChatGPT, they all run on infrastructure. AI runs on slightly different infrastructure or could run on slightly different infrastructure, but it all uses computation. And in order for computation to run, it needs hardware. It's it's simple math. Now, the challenge that we're trying to solve is it's a supply chain challenge. You, in a way, need to predict how much demand you will get and to meet that with the available supply for short term, mid term, long term. because the usage is not always predictable. You sometimes will have outages, as we have experienced in the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight over Netflix. You
We
don't
did.
always able to get exactly what you want because there's an outage. There's some component that was missing, couldn't scale correctly. And on the flip side, you don't want to run on a 5% utilization because that's really expensive. Now you have to figure out how to trade off those balances because you constantly have changes, right? Just look at the amount of news we see today, the breaking news we see today. The stock market is all over the place. And the world is very, very dynamic. And the hyperscalers, the AWS, the GCP, the Azure, allow you to benefit from that flexibility. You just have to say how much infrastructure you need, and they will give that to you. But you have to be really on point of how much you need, because if you would ask for too much, that will break your bank. And if you would ask for too little, that will break your user experience to the customer. They won't be able to use your application, right? So you have
Yeah,
to be
right.
really on point. You cannot have air gaps. And the usage is not linear, it's not steady. It's really up and down, left, right. It's always changing.
Yeah.
And you have different patterns. And you have different patterns that are constantly being created. So you have to figure out how you create new prediction models for different usage patterns and make sure that your infrastructure is there whenever you need it to be, for how long, as long as you need it, and it's gone once you don't need it, and orchestrate that. It's not quite an easy task, especially at very high velocity and a very large scale. So this is where technology comes to help.
Yeah, I would imagine that um, predicting, almost overcapacity is kind of what you have to do, and you have to pay a lot for it because, as an example you just gave, like everybody I know was somewhere during the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, and everybody had complaints about what was going on. Was it my TV at home? What's really happening? And it just seems like when you've got a single event like that or something that requires massive computing power at that moment, if you can predict on the high end, you're just going to end up paying a lot for it. And it sounds like if there's a software, a service like yourself who comes in, who's able to say, we can optimize that capacity and do it at less money. Because we're looking at every micro transaction essentially adding up to the whole. It's a big numbers game. Then that would be a huge opportunity, for those types of clients. So that sounds pretty amazing. Was when you go out, you talk to people, are they like, yeah, man, like this is the problem. It's a enormous problem. Is this like a major thing when you call a company that they're like, hey, yeah, we are dealing with this, or we know we're going to be dealing it with it, right? Because that's the other problem, is not just predicting the amount of capacity you need as a company, but you've got to look at the entire shift that's going on right now. Everything's moving into infrastructure as AI is pushing it. And so these large providers are going to be taking up a lot of that as well. The large enterprises, they need the extra capacity. Like you said, you can't have the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight in the case of Netflix. You can't have it just go out because people are going to they're going to want their money back. It's also going to damage your reputation.
Exactly.
Future potential clients will just say, I'm not going through that experience and paying that again. So that seems the bigger thing. We have this huge shift, and it seems to me like it'll be everybody's got to be thinking about this. Like, how am I going to compete as maybe a middle-sized company against the expansion needs of these giant companies, as you mentioned, like an AWS, or even that second tier, like a Netflix?
Yeah, it's also depends on where the company is today. So in a way, you have, when you think about the value we bring to the table, it's actually caters to, I would say, two different personas. The first persona is the CFO, right? I need to cut costs. I need to run more efficiently. The VP operations. We have to tighten the belt on one hand. On the other hand, they would not be risking the impact of fallout in case of lack of infrastructure, because we optimize too much, and that has a negative impact on reputation, that drives negative value, that creates additional operational headache of refunds, compensations, blah blah blah. It opens a whole can of worms, right?
Yeah,
So they
I
want
can
to
see that.
save money. The other component in the picture is the people who are actually responsible for running infrastructure. Those are your cloud engineers, infrastructure engineers, DevOps, system reliability engineers. They are making sure that their system runs as smoothly as possible. Now, they are bombarded with a lot of tasks, and some of those tasks are really repetitive. And they have to figure out how to build specific components for specific use cases to make sure that the application actually runs when things are uncertain. And for them, that's the biggest value that we bring to the table. It's like, you shouldn't do repetitive tasks. You
Yeah,
cannot operate as fast and as efficient as we do.
yeah,
And instead of you trying to fight it, you just can scratch it permanently off your task list of, I'm never going to do that again. That enables innovation. That accelerates innovation. So it's both saves money and accelerates innovation. So that's what we're offering. Regarding the time, given the current market volatility and the adoption of AI, like, people are trying to clear budgets to bring AI tools to their systems without compromising on people. So this is the exact niche that we're falling into.
so how is AI really impacting cloud ops right now? Is the primary problem that's solving is its ability to take in to study so much information so quickly they can provide these very small windows of opportunity to rebalance or optimize, in this case, the distribution of compute power, for example. Is that where it is? Just the ability to take information at a much larger scale and make money through these kind of microtransactions? Or is there another kind of big window that you see AI kind of impacting this area, cloud apps and cloud
So I
dev,
would say
ops dev?
it's actually redistributing and building forecasting models,
Hmm.
because your usage trends are sporadic and unpredictable. And every time you
Gotcha.
see an event that creates a new behavioral pattern. The amount of behavioral patterns we see right now is really is a lot, and
Yeah.
every behavioral pattern requires an adaptation to it. So by having more models that you can say, hey, I see this trend, it means that most likely that will be the right pattern of getting more or getting less infrastructure. The more models we can have, the
Yeah.
faster it will work. Like, if you have to think about the autonomous vehicles, right? If you try Tesla, the amount of data it processes in order for it to have a smoother drive, like, it builds, it learns, like, okay, now it's gonna work, this way, it's not that great. And as time progresses, the amount of patterns and the amount of signals the system is able to build, it gives you a much smoother experience,
Right.
because it's all about pattern creation, pattern recognition, and pattern generation.
Yeah. Yeah, I always laugh when you see some pundit on TV talking about, the death of Tesla, because it's, like just another EV competing in a market against maybe Chinese cheap vehicles coming in. I mean, it's really an AI company, and you can't replicate it because it spent so many years accumulating this data, and now with the AI systems they developed, the ability to turn that data into meaningful information. There's such a power in that company. So I always get a kind of a laugh at that when I hear that.
Yeah, Tesla is it shouldn't be perceived as a vehicle manufacturing company. They're
Yeah.
not. This
Yeah.
is the tool they have to uh, to roll out their innovation.
Yeah.
But the brain of the company is not in the wheel or the pedals or the screen.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
power of the company is actually in their ability to collect tremendous amounts of data, analyze it, and allow you to have an experience such as Waymo,
Hmm.
but with significantly less sensors
Yeah.
and significantly more data. So I would say that it's going to be a very interesting race to offer an affordable, scalable transportation experience.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Waymos, and I've done videos on them. And living out here in San Francisco, they're so ubiquitous too that we don't even think anything of them anymore. But it's funny, Maxim. I was driving home the other day, and I was just behind another one. You know, they're everywhere, and I was thinking, are they how long will it be before they can make money? Because what is the cost to operate a car like this? And then I started to think of if Tesla really they're looking at that, if they come in with this robo taxi concept, as you said, that's able to do things for a model that's a fraction of the cost because of the AI technology that they've basically studied and built through Tesla's on the road, that's going to be really interesting. Really interesting.
So think about the following: if when you see a Waymo, how many sensors you see on it?
Well, you've got the first thing you notice is the big one on the top flashing, you know,
Mhm.
flashing into space to the stars. And then you'll see things on like the tail lights and the front lights. And that's kind of what's visible to the eye. Although
Uh-huh.
I know it's got a 360 radius that can go out a very large, distance in each direction.
Uh-huh. But
Yeah.
how many sensors do you see on Tesla?
You see nothing. You just see a
Exactly.
car.
Exactly. You see,
Yeah.
there are cameras.
Right.
So in a way, if you have to think about the production costs of a Waymo
Yeah.
versus a Tesla, if when I would not say if, I would say when Tesla would be able to leverage their sensors, which are relatively basic sensors, and have a very strong processing component that can give you the same experience as Waymo, but with
Yeah.
way less sensors. It's gonna be it's gonna be a different game.
Well, the other thing too is the brand. You have a national brand and a national identity already, where people are very aware of Tesla around the world, but particularly in the United States. Um, the product's cool, it's hip, it's sleek. There's a comfort level because Teslas have been on the road everywhere, and most people that own Teslas really love Teslas, and they always say wonderful things about them. At least that's been my experience. So launch of the robo taxi and understanding, well, this is a Tesla. I think the adoption rates will be a lot quicker. Like people are, who is Waymo? I've never heard of Waymo before, right? And um, it takes a long time. You have to have your own personal user experience before you feel comfortable, to kind of go out and try it. A lot of people are nervous. Just the concept of a car driving around with no, anything can happen in a car, right? If you make the wrong movement, the wrong turn. But I think if you had a platform and cars that were built off of Tesla models that you believe in the brand and you trust it because it's been around forever, and they most of them today, the software, they all have the self-driving feature anyway, and people experience that a little bit. They try it a little bit. I think the adoption rate will be pretty quick just on that basis, because I think what slowed down the adoption of Waymo, really, I mean, outside of the physical number of cars on the road, is the fear factor, right? It's something completely new. And until you observe it for a while, right, before anyone got in one that I know, they drove around and watched them and they tried to find out, where there were problems until they finally took the plunge and did it. And maybe the first plunge we did, I picked flat areas that were maybe like 20 blocks away versus, some large hill where we're looking the city and I've got to go down and maneuver, because there was no trust factor. If someone says, well, Google or something, like, well, that's not giving me trust. But if it's like, oh, it's a Tesla model using Tesla's technology, you're like, oh, Okay. So I think people underestimate the adoption based on that brand recognition as well.
And also, if you have to think about, I 100% agree with you. And if you add the concept of Jeff Bezos, people would want to have better service for lower costs, right? If you benchmark the prices of Waymo with the prices of Uber or Lyft, they're kind of give or take the same, right?
Yeah.
So if you have to think about the cost, the biggest cost of Uber is actually the driver,
Yeah.
right? So Waymo offers similar experience, or I would say identical service, or I would say slightly even more superior service, because um, there are elements of not being, you feel more, I would say there is the physical fear of being in a Waymo, and there's the emotional fear. Like, listen, if now let's kill that thought. Let's kill that thought. But
Well, one thing I can say is, having people in cars driving are not necessarily the best thing. What some of the comments that people always make to me about Waymos is that it was so nice because I didn't have to hear the driver talking on the phone to his family. Sometimes there's a kind of a cumulative smell that builds up in a car
mhm,
based on people and hot, all these
mhm,
things kind of come into play. And you get in, you have this, you set the terms, you set the music. You don't have to argue. The driver isn't having a bad day. He's always
mhm,
having a good day. He
mhm,
always agrees with you. Right.
yeah,
My only fear was if you're accosted in a Waymo, there's no one to kind of stand up and dart for the exit. I've always wondered how that's worked, but overall, it's funny because so many people when they come to California from all over, even though it's to you and I, it's been like, yeah, a Waymo has been around for 3 or 4 years. We take them all the time. So many people are still unaware of a Waymo, and they go, "What? There's a car that drives all around." I said, "No." I'm like 1/5 of all the cars driving around the city of San Francisco seem like they're Waymos. So that adoption curve is just really, really interesting. And so I guess one of the fun things we love about being out here in California. Which, while I'm looking at you and seeing beautiful Palo Alto, what are some other things you do besides run this company and think about AI all day, and all the seriousness of kind of solving a big problem and making an impact? What do you like to do to chill, to have fun? There's a lot of great things going on in Palo Alto, for sure.
so I'll give you this. You mentioned Stanford, right?
Yes, of
So
course.
Stanford has a very large, very interesting community of researchers, right? And part of my passion is technology and history.
Yeah,
So I'm able to meet really interesting people and chat with them about these things, right? It's technology, it's history. On top of that, we have the Warriors, right? Which have a phenomenal season. Hopefully they would qualify and they would continue their amazing journey through the playoffs this year, right? Um, they're
the
great
odds are
parks.
good.
They're great
Yeah,
parks. My older son plays soccer and he plays flag football, right? So I enjoy watching him play. My younger son, kind of, he's 3, so he enjoys kind of the parks and all the weather. So it's a really nice and great place to be.
yeah. I mean, I mean, I live there, and I probably spend a couple days a week down in Menlo Park and Palo Alto, and I spent a lot of time at Stanford. And I think that's kind of a cool thing, not just about Stanford, but my experience with the whole Silicon Valley is kind of the book with the famous guy's name on it. You could actually go talk to that guy. A lot of places in the world you can't do that. The billionaire, right? Who's 40 years old, it's very possible to meet up with that person or connect with that person. They're not so emotionally distanced. For most of them that I meet and have worked with, that's the core of my clientele for the last 20 years. They remember like yesterday, um, when they were just starting out and they just were doing their first or second startup and they were struggling and they had to ask everybody for help. And that's because it really hasn't been that long. Even a huge veteran of the industry who's 50 or 60 years old, it's still only 30 years. I mean, it's absolutely nothing. And I think the culture, the ethos in the Silicon Valley tends to be to want to give back, and it tends to want to hear all new ideas, irrespective of where they come from, because ideas come from anywhere. It could be the PhD at Stanford, but it could be the person that never even went to college. Again, they're a great coder, and they are tackling a big problem with a core team. So that's what I love about it. I'm sure you have that same experience, and that's why you're out here and you're not somewhere else in the country.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll share with you kind of some of the people I was lucky to interact with. Uh, Number one, I would have to say John Bird. He was
Mm.
the coach of Steve Jobs.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. I've seen him talk too. Yeah.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I would have to point out Jim Cook, one of the co-founders of Netflix,
Yeah.
CFO of Mozilla. I've recently had coffee with Avery Wang. He was the chief scientist behind Shazam. So, like, these people shaped or worked with people who shaped this world, right? The world
Yeah.
that we're living in, right? So this is second to none, right?
Isn't it great that a startup entrepreneur that you can sometimes you can just email them and they email you right back. I mean, I don't think people really realize. I mean, I'm sure they're all day long. People are trying to connect with them, but I think there's a passion for the difficulty of being an entrepreneur, and those that have made it would want to kind of pass that back downward to the next group of people, and that is something I love that kind of energy about the Silicon Valley and Northern
100%.
Cal. Yeah,
And this is kind of the power of this place is everybody's trying to help,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
People,
Yeah,
if you come with an, a mission that resonates and you have a passion about solving a problem, people would subscribe to that, and people
yeah,
will try to figure out how you navigate through this problem, because running a startup it's tough. You always have to navigate through uncertainty, and you have to be very, very focused on a lot of things at the same time, while not compromising on things that you strongly believe that they're the right cause.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we see amazing successes here, right? All the tech giants have come out of this place.
Well, not only do you see successes, but the percentage of the large tech companies. I think I read somewhere it was like don't quote me on this, but it was a huge number, like 37% of all the founders of these great kind of big bellwether tech companies were not born in the United States. So not only is it a great opportunity to connect, but people can come from all over the world and they still get to experience that same kind of orientation, welcoming spirit, and openness to listen to a good idea. So I think that's really, really important as well. And we want to encourage that, obviously, as a country. We want the best and the brightest people to come here, build these great companies and create massive wealth for themselves, but for everybody that's involved.
Yeah,
Even pension funds, for example, down the road. That's the beauty of this incredible cycle that we have out here in the California.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. So I like to always add these podcasts. It's been a lot of fun learning about AI. I feel like I've learned a little bit more about another piece of the puzzle that nobody's trying to solve. But I always end the podcast because it's called the Venture to Victory podcast with the same question, which is, what does it mean to you? Could be in work, personal, just life in general, to truly be victorious.
um I would say that if you build something that outlives you,
Mm,
and there is one element that you have full control of, it requires a very hard work to build it, and it will take a snap to lose it. It's called your reputation, right?
yeah,
So if
right.
you build something that would outlive you and that will carry out reputation, that's a victory for me, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a big dad lesson too. I know you've got a couple boys. I've got 4 kids and 2 of them are boys, and we are always talking about the most important thing you have in life is your reputation and your word. And people will it'll solve endless problems that nothing else will solve for you when people trust you and want to help you. But it can so easily, with one situation, just be completely destroyed. I always tell them that that's the one thing you guard more than anything in your life. So I'm sure if you have not already with your children, they're a little bit younger than mine. That'll be a topic of discussion. It always comes up.
Yeah, you build relationships that would carry you out for life.
Yeah. Well, I've
Yeah,
been watching a lot of Black Mirror episodes. So, in terms of building something that outlives you, at some point we will be able to import our consciousness into some machine, and technically we will outlive our actual bodies. But I guess more to come on that end.
yeah. I would have to lean on Einstein here. Einstein said that I'm not sure with which weapon the World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Yeah. Well, that's a sobering reality. Hopefully, that happens, 100 years from now or 200 years from now, or hopefully never, that we
Yeah,
raise our level of, collective consciousness to where we can avoid something that would basically destroy our whole civilization. But that's kind of been the history of man. So let's hope for the best and try to do some good today. Yeah.
thank you, Tim.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. And that's a wrap. The Venture to Victory podcast is provided by MatchStar Venture Search. If you're interested in any of our open executive roles or need help sourcing world-class talent for your company, check out our website at matchstar.com.